Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of an Arizona desert plateau. The air dry and metallic, as if dust itself carries a taste of rust. The silence is so complete it presses against your ears. Then, from the depths of an abandoned mine shaft sealed for decades, you hear the echo of a crow's cry bouncing up from the darkness below. And when workers crack open the barrier of rock and timber, what spills out isn't just stale, suffocating air, but bones. 3 skeletons folded unnaturally, sealed away as if time itself had conspired to hide them. It is the summer of 2022, a discovery that would unravel 10 years of silence. A mystery buried in the red dust of the desert. This is the story of 3 friends who set out on a road trip through Arizona and never came back. Their names were Ethan Morales, Tyler Grant, and Maya Ellison. Ethan was 24, a photography student from Flagstaff, known for carrying an old Canon film camera everywhere he went. Friends described him as quietly obsessed, a man who saw beauty where others only saw wasteland. He collected fragments of life, rusted bottle caps, torn postcards, a small cracked compass he said once belonged to his grandfather. That compass would later become more than just a trinket, it would become a symbol of everything lost. Tyler, 25, was the opposite. Loud, restless, a mechanic by trade, but also the kind of person who could turn any stranger into a drinking partner in minutes. He was the planner of the trip, the one who insisted on detours down forgotten desert highways. "The road isn't about where it goes," he told his girlfriend before leaving. "It's about what it hides." And then there was Maya, 23, an aspiring journalist with an endless curiosity and a stubborn streak. She was the one who kept journals, meticulously recording moments, as if she already knew they would someday matter. Her family would later cling to those journals like lifelines. The 3 had been inseparable since high school in Tucson, bonded by desert nights, cheap roadside diners, and dreams bigger than the city limits that hemmed them in. The summer of 2012 was supposed to be their celebration before life scattered them apart. Ethan had been accepted into a graduate program in Oregon. Maya was interviewing for internships in New York, and Tyler was debating whether to take over his father's repair shop. So they packed Ethan's beat-up Ford Bronco, loaded with a tent, coolers of beer, Ethan's camera gear, and Maya's stack of blank notebooks. Their plan, a week-long road trip across northern Arizona, through ghost towns, canyon lands, and the labyrinth of forgotten mining country. They would never return. July 17, 2012. Bronco was last seen leaving a gas station in Holbrook around 10:40 am. Security footage showed Ethan at the pump, Tyler joking with the cashier inside, Maya jotting something in her notebook as she leaned against the car. That notebook, her handwriting, her careful dates, would later be the last living record of their journey. Receipts found in the glove compartment placed them later that day at a roadside diner near Winslow. The waitress remembered them clearly. Tyler had drawn a smiley face with ketchup on his plate. Maya asked for extra napkins. Ethan took a photograph of the neon sign outside the diner, a sign so faded now it barely glows. By evening, they drove deeper into Apache County, where mining towns once thrived before being abandoned to sand and silence. And then, nothing. When Ethan's mother didn't hear from him by July 19, the day he promised he'd call, she assumed poor reception. When Tyler's girlfriend's texts went unanswered, she grew restless but told herself it was just the road. But by July 21st, when Maya missed a scheduled phone interview for an internship at an Arizona paper, alarm bells rang. Within days, the 3 families were calling sheriff's departments, hospitals, anyone who might have seen the Bronco. A missing persons report was filed, and search efforts began in earnest. For Ethan's parents, every call to voicemail was a dagger. For Tyler's girlfriend, every hour felt like betrayal by the man who promised he'd be back. For Maya's younger brother, who looked up to her, the silence was unbearable. One of Maya's friends described standing in her bedroom after the disappearance, Notebooks lined up neatly on the shelf, her handwriting curling across each page like a voice still speaking. The last one blank sat on her desk, waiting to be filled. The initial search focused on highways and state routes between Holbrook, Winslow, and the vast Navajo Nation. Helicopters flew over canyons. Canine units traced faint scents before losing them in open desert wind. For days, volunteers combed through arroyos, gullies, and abandoned structures. They found sun-bleached bones, but of cattle, not people. Rusted vehicles buried in sand, but not the Bronco. One chilling detail surfaced. A trucker claimed to have seen a dark SUV pulled off near an abandoned mine entrance on the night of July 17. He remembered it because he thought it odd who stops near a boarded-up shaft at midnight. But by the time investigators arrived, no vehicle was there. That detail would haunt the families for years. During one of the early searches, deputies discovered something unusual: a rusted metal cooler half buried in the sand near a remote mining road. Inside, they found only melted ice packs and scraps of faded labels. But etched faintly into the lid, with what looked like a pocket knife, were the initials T.G. Tyler Grant. Had he been there? Did he carve his initials as a marker or as a message? The cooler was photographed, cataloged, and stored. Families stared at the photo for hours, wondering if it was a clue or just coincidence. Weeks bled into months. The desert swallowed the search. By September, posters of the three friends began curling at the corners on bulletin boards across Arizona. Rain streaked ink down their faces. Telephone poles still bore their names, but the words "missing" faded under the relentless sun. For the families, life fractured. Ethan's mother stopped sleeping in her bedroom, keeping the front porch light on every night, just in case. Tyler's father drove hundreds of miles, retracing desert highways alone, convinced he could find the Bronco if he just kept looking. Maya's brother turned 18 the next year and refused to celebrate, saying she should have been here. The case went cold. No new evidence. No Bronco, no bodies. Just silence stretching on and on, that small cracked compass Ethan always carried, mentioned in nearly every memory his family shared, remained missing, too. His mother would say, "If I ever see that compass again, I'll know he's near." A simple brass relic, but it became the symbol of his absence. A pointer forever lost. But then, nearly a year after the disappearance, a Navajo rancher reported something unusual. Strange noises echoing at night from one of the old sealed shafts near St. John's. He described it as like metal grinding, or voices caught in the wind. Deputies dismissed it as shifting timbers or coyotes, but when search volunteers visited the site, they noticed something chilling. Wedged into the splintered boards sealing the shaft was a scrap of faded fabric. A torn sleeve red plaid, the same shirt Tyler was wearing in the last gas station footage, and just like that, the desert whispered again. The torn sleeve was stiff with dust, sun-faded, and brittle to the touch. Deputies photographed it, bagged it, and compared it to the footage from that Holbrook gas station. The shirt matched. Red plaid, worn loose over a white t-shirt. Tyler Grant's last recorded outfit. For the families, this was a gut punch. It meant their children, or at least some trace of them, had been here, at this forgotten mine shaft in the desert. But when the boards were pried back, deputies found nothing but silence. The shaft was sealed with rubble and appeared too dangerous to enter. They sealed it again, filing the fragment as inconclusive evidence. And just like that, the whisper of hope faded back into silence. The years crawled forward. By 2013, search efforts dwindled. Volunteers stopped answering calls. The sheriff's office moved on to newer cases. But the family's COULDN, single quotes D. Each household froze in time. Ethan's room remained. Untouched camera equipment still perched on his desk. A roll of undeveloped film waiting in his backpack. His cracked compass, still missing, became an obsession for his mother. "If we find the compass," she repeated in interviews, We'll find Ethan. Tyler's girlfriend broke down on camera during a vigil in 2014, saying, "I still dream about his laugh. Then I wake up and remember he's still out there." Maya's family organized an annual candlelight vigil. By the 5th year, fewer than a dozen people came. The candles flickered against the desert wind, tiny lights swallowed by endless night, posters bleached into ghostly smears. The Bronco, their tent, their belongings never found. The case grew colder than the desert night. But suspicion began to creep in. By 2015, whispers circulated. Some locals claimed the three had been partying with strangers near a ghost town, and things went wrong. Others believed they'd stumbled across something they weren't supposed to see: drug routes, hidden caches, or worse, a few darker voices suggested one of them might have betrayed the others. Theories metastasized. Investigators quietly examined acquaintances. Tyler's temper, his impulsiveness, Ethan's habit of drifting into dangerous places for a perfect shot, Maya's stubborn curiosity. But the most sinister rumor pointed toward a man named Calvin Rourke. Rourke was a reclusive figure in Apache County, a former prospector turned scavenger. He was known for prowling abandoned mines, collecting scrap metal, and running off trespassers with a shotgun. Locals described him as paranoid, territorial, and violent. Some said he lived out of an RV, parking near old shafts like a guard dog. When asked if he'd seen the three missing travelers, Rourke claimed no. But his name kept coming up. A diner waitress said she saw him the night of July 17, 2012, watching Ethan, Tyler, and Maya from across the counter. Sheriff's deputies visited him once. They found nothing illegal, no evidence. And so the suspicion withered, but never died. In 2016, a hiker exploring near Sanders stumbled upon something haunting: a sun-bleached Ford Bronco door, detached, riddled with rust, lying half buried in red sand, spray-painted faintly across it in crude black letters, "Keep out." Investigators couldn't confirm if the door belonged to Ethan's Bronco. It was the same model, the same faded green. But the Veng plate was missing. The photograph of that door circulated online, fueling conspiracy forums. To many, it became a symbol of the case, the desert swallowing truth, spitting back fragments. The families continued to fracture under the weight of absence. Ethan's parents divorced quietly in 2017, unable to bear the silence between them. His mother kept attending vigils. His father moved north, never speaking of it again. Tyler's father, stubborn as ever, spent weekends driving desert backroads with a CB radio, convinced his son might still call out. He carried the cooler with TG carved on it in his truck, like a relic. Maya's brother grew bitter. "The world stopped caring after year 3, he told a reporter. But we didn't. The symbolic objects, Ethan's compass, Tyler's cooler, Maya's notebooks, lingered in the family's memories, each one a painful reminder of what had vanished. In 2018, renewed funding allowed for a second push. Deputies returned to several abandoned shafts, including the one near St. John's where the plaid sleeve was found years earlier. This time, they brought ground-penetrating radar. The scans revealed voids deep within the shaft-collapsed tunnels, pockets where something could be hidden. But before they could explore, funding ran out again. The shaft was deemed too unstable, too costly to excavate. The families were devastated. Once again, hope dangled in front of them, only to be yanked away. But in 2019, 7 years after the disappearance, a startling clue surfaced. An antiques dealer in Gallup, New Mexico, contacted authorities about an item sold to him by a drifter. A brass compass, cracked down the middle. Initials, EM, scratched faintly on the back. Ethan Morales's compass. It had resurfaced, hundreds of miles from where the friends vanished. The question was chilling. How did Ethan's compass travel across state lines without him? When the compass surfaced, the effect was electric. It was Ethan's. His mother recognized the hairline crack across its face instantly. He'd carried it everywhere, photographed it, fiddled with it, even called it his North Star. But the compass wasn't just proof of life. It was proof of movement. The drifter who sold it to the antiques dealer claimed he'd found it in the desert, though his story shifted with every retelling. Sometimes he said it came from near a ghost town, other times out of an old shaft. Investigators couldn't pin him down. Still, the object reawakened the case. The families demanded answers. How could something so personal vanish with Ethan in 2012 and resurface in a shop window 7 years later? Detectives circled back to familiar names, and once again, one stood out: Calvin Rourke. By 2020, Rourke had developed a darker reputation. Several hikers accused him of threatening them with a rifle near abandoned mine entrances. Some even claimed he bragged that people who go poking around don't always come back. Authorities interviewed him again. Rourke denied everything, smirking through the questions. He admitted to trading with drifters, selling scrap, maybe even a compass once. But when pressed about the 3 missing friends, his tone hardened. They went looking where they shouldn't have. Desert keeps its own secrets. You leave it at that. His words chilled investigators, but not enough for an arrest. In the same year, a volunteer search team combing near St. John's discovered something half buried in red sand: a weathered notebook. Its cover warped, pages fused from water damage. Inside, only fragments of writing survived. But the handwriting was unmistakable: Maya Ellison's. One legible line read, "Tyler says he heard something down in the shaft. Ethan wants a photo. I don't feel right about this." The page ended there, water-stained into silence. A haunting image, a ruined notebook, words smeared into ghosts. By the 8th year, hope was fragile. Ethan's mother clutched the compass when detectives showed it to her, whispering, "He touched this. This touched his skin." She refused to return it to evidence storage, begging to keep it. Tyler's father broke down publicly at a vigil in 2020, his voice cracking as he asked, "Why won't they just dig the shaft? Why won't they look?" Maya's brother, now in his mid-20s, became bitter toward authorities. He started running a blog, posting theories, maps, and photos. One post read, "We don't need hope anymore. We need answers. The objects, the compass, the cooler." The notebook felt like breadcrumbs leading into the dark. 3 leading theories dominated the public imagination. Accident. The friends entered the mine, ignoring warning signs, and were sealed inside by a collapse. Crime of opportunity. They encountered someone, perhaps Rourke, perhaps another drifter who forced them inside. Betrayal within. Online theorists fixated on Tyler, citing his impulsive streak and temper. Could he have lashed out in anger? Could a fight have led to tragedy? For the families, these theories were knives. Suggesting one friend might have killed the others was unbearable. Still, suspicion clung. In 2021, pressure from families and renewed media attention forced authorities to act. They secured funding for a controlled excavation of the St. John's shaft. Crews arrived with lights, respirators, and cameras. The air around the site was thick with dread. As beams cut into the desert night, the sealed boards were torn down. The shaft yawned open, exhaling decades of stale, choking air. Inside, timbers groaned. Dust spiraled upward like smoke. Crews descended only a short way before stopping, because there, at the lip of the shaft, they found something lodged in the rubble. A camera, Ethan's Canon film camera. Its strap frayed, its body coated in dust but intact. Inside, a roll of undeveloped film. The rescuers froze, realizing they might be holding a time capsule. The last moments, recorded forever. The shaft loomed below, swallowing their light. What would the film reveal? The Canon camera was rushed to a lab. Technicians handled it as if it were radioactive, delicate, volatile, a vessel of ghosts. The roll of film inside had sat in darkness for nearly a decade. When the negatives were finally developed, the room went still. Most frames were of the desert canyons, sun-scorched signs, abandoned towns. Ethan's careful eye lingered even on decay, but the last few frames were different, blurry, uneven. Taken inside a mine shaft. A beam of light cutting through dust. Maya's face partially illuminated, tense, lips pressed tight. Tyler pointing into the dark, and then the final shot. A figure. At the far end of the tunnel, broad-shouldered, holding something long and metallic. The photo was grainy, but the outline was unmistakable. A man. Watching them. In early 2022, 10 years after the friends vanished, the St. John's shaft was reopened fully. Crews lowered cameras and lights into the unstable void. The descent was harrowing. The air was rancid, heavy with the smell of rust and rot. Collapsed beams jutted like broken ribs. Silence pressed against every breath. And then, 60 feet down, they saw it. A tangle of bones. 3 skeletons, entwined as though left in a heap. Clothing still clung to parts of them. Red plaid, a torn canvas jacket, fragments of denim. But what froze investigators was the way the bodies had been left. Not collapsed by accident. Not scattered by time, but bound, rusting wire twisted, around wrists and ankles. This wasn't an accident. It was execution. Forensic anthropologists worked carefully, piecing together what had happened. Ethan's bones bore fractures along the ribs, suggesting blunt force trauma. Maya's skull had a sharp indentation. Tyler's femur was broken clean through. All 3 had been alive when bound. Dental records confirmed their identities. After a decade, the mystery of where they were had ended. But the question of why and who remained among the remains. Investigators found objects. Maya's ruined notebook, pages blackened by rot, a cooler lid with TG scratched faintly across it, and tucked into Ethan's jacket pocket. Astonishingly preserved. A second roll of film never developed. The compass, the camera, the notebook, the cooler. Each symbolic item had led here. The final photograph sealed the truth. On the second roll of film, barely developed images showed more of that night. Maya writing in her notebook by flashlight. Tyler climbing down into the shaft. Ethan snapping photo after photo, as though trying to document everything. And then another figure again. Clearer this time, a man in a brimmed hat. Thick beard. A shotgun slung across his chest. Locals recognized him instantly. Calvin Rourke, the reclusive scavenger, the self-proclaimed guardian of abandoned mines. The family's worst suspicions were confirmed. Their children hadn't simply vanished into the desert. They'd crossed paths with a man who believed the mines were his domain, and trespassers his prey. In April 2022, deputies raided Rourke's RV outside Sanders. Inside, they found troves of stolen objects, old mining tools, scraps of metal, and most damning personal belongings not his own. Among them, a bracelet belonging to Maya. Rourke was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder. The trial that followed was chilling. Prosecutors painted him as a paranoid loner, consumed by obsession with protecting abandoned shafts. Witnesses testified about his threats, his muttered boasts about keeping people out. The photos were shown in court. Ethan's final images projected on a screen. Faces of the 3 friends forever trapped in the beam of a flashlight. Rourke showed no emotion. The jury deliberated for less than a day. Guilty, sentenced to life without parole. Closure is a strange word. It promises relief, but delivers only finality. For Ethan's mother, the compass now rests on her nightstand, not as a symbol of hope, but as a gravestone. It pointed me here, she said. And now I know where he rests. Tyler's father wept openly at the verdict. He left the courtroom clutching the cooler lid like it was his son's hand. Maya's brother said only, he didn't silence her. She wrote it all down. He now keeps her surviving notebook stacked beside his bed. 10 years of waiting ended in a single truth. Their loved ones had been murdered, bound and sealed away in the desert darkness. The abandoned shaft in St. John's has since been filled with concrete, sealed forever. No memorial marks the spot, only the desert wind passing over it. but the objects remain. The compass, the cooler, the notebooks, the photographs, relics of lives cut short, fragments of a story buried under sand and silence. Imagine them now, three friends, laughing in a Bronco as the sun dipped behind red mesas. Dreams ahead of them, notebooks waiting to be filled, film rolls unspooled in cameras. And then darkness. The mineshaft did not just swallow their bodies. It swallowed 10 years of hope, 10 years of searching, 10 years of grief. And when the truth finally emerged, it was not supernatural, not mysterious, not cosmic. It was human. A man's cruelty. His obsession. His madness. In the end, the desert did not keep its own secrets. It kept his. And for three friends who dreamed of escape, it became their tomb.